all the way from Melbourne, Australia, please welcome to the stage, Miles Williams!
I appreciate it. So I'd like to kick off, and if I can get a show of hands, who thinks they're an entrepreneur? Let's have a look there. That's a reasonable amount. And if you can keep your hand up if you've experienced failure in your journey as an entrepreneur. I think more hands went up then than initially, but that's okay. So that's great, because failure is an absolute, critical element of being an entrepreneur. And my message to you today is to let you know that for those of you who might be about to begin your entrepreneurial journey, it's an absolute, it's going to happen, right? There's no denying it. It's an inevitable part of it. And if you're on your entrepreneurial journey, you will know that failure happens. And I guess my key message today is to let you know that it's actually okay to talk about your failure. And in fact, the more you can share it and the more you can acknowledge it, the more you'll learn and the more you'll grow. You know, I was outside at lunchtime, the morning break, before we got here. Any of these events, as I'm sure many of you have been to, and it's very easy when we get into that networking environment, we're largely talking about the success. We're talking about the opportunity, the deals, the sales, the profits. I'm starting this business. Not too many say that they absolutely cocked up, right? It's just not what we talk about. But it is incredibly important that we do. And to that end, what I'd like to do today is share some of my failures with you. I very appropriately call myself the effed up entrepreneur. It's probably also appropriate that I throw in the language warning right about now. So the F is not exactly what you may think. Yes, I've absolutely fucked up in my time. But the F is a suite of words that are closely associated with being an entrepreneur. We're foolish, we fail, we get frustrated, we lose our focus. We're all striving for financial freedom, and we're looking towards this future where apparently everything's going to be okay, and let's wind it up and make a shitload of money before an old fart. So let me tell you how I began and some of the mistakes I made. So I left school young, nothing really wrong with that. I did an apprenticeship as a cabinet maker. Not necessarily my parents' choice, but something that I had my heart set on, and I've been in the trade industry ever since. Like many Australians, I put a backpack on after I finished my apprenticeship, started travelling the world, spent a few months in Europe, and ended up right here in California. I had no money, had a one-way ticket, and as you can imagine, I wasn't greeted with a big smile by immigration when I walked through. So they stamped me with 30 days and said, Mr. Williams, we'll see you back here in a month. But as we all know, entrepreneurs have this tenacity. We like a challenge, and I was up for it, and there was no way in hell that I was leaving this country in 30 days. 24 days later, I was married. Now that was fucking foolish. Two years later, I had 2 children. I had a business here. I was living down near Pasadena in LA, and it was a good life. It was right during the time of Crocodile Dundee, if any of you are old enough to remember, and he had set the path. All I had to do was speak, and I could charge, right? Not speaking like this, not like Coach Cherie was talking about, but that was the way how I got my business. Advertised that I was Australian. I had a business called Koala Cabinets, right? So I was milking that little puppy for everything it was worth. But all good things come to an end. I was working around the clock. I had no plan, no vision, no coach. Everything I was supposed to have, I did not have. My marriage was on the rocks, never saw my kids, never made contact with my family back home. And it just got to a point about 6 years later where I'd had enough. So I sold off what I could, packed up the rest, went back to Australia, and it was a failure, right? My time in LA had really been a failure. I moved back in with my parents, wife, 2 children. That probably lasted about 3 months. Hit the divorce court, in the custody battle, you name it. I'm sure many of you are knowledgeable of what I'm talking about. But hey, life goes on. Wife and kids came back here. I stayed there, got a regular job, had to pay the debts. Got to love the cost of lawyers. But I think within every entrepreneur, there's a small flame that burns, right? And it's important that as an entrepreneur that we keep that flame burning and that we understand that if we're in the right environment, that we find people who are like-minded, that we continue to look for challenges, that we create that right environment, then flashpoint occurs and a raging inferno can ensue. And that's what happened to me. I went back to my roots as a joiner. I found an opportunity. Melbourne's construction industry was booming. The apartments had come to town. And in Melbourne CBD, there were high-rise apartments going up left, right and centre. So I got a plan and I got advice and I got the tools of trade that I could. It was effectively, to begin with, myself and one van. Then I got another guy in the one van. Then I got another two guys and another two vans, and onward it went until I had 50 plus joinery installers, a fleet of vans. I owned Melbourne insofar as joinery installations. It was awesome. So I was rocking it, okay? Life was good, heaps of business, but unknowingly I was incredibly vulnerable, right? I was working in the business, not on the business. Very, very common for entrepreneurs, particularly in trade businesses. I trusted the wrong person and I suffered a significant financial blow, right? Tens and tens of thousands of dollars. It set me right back, right? That mountain of success that I had climbed, I was right back down the bottom now, extremely frustrated and poor and not much of a business left. And I guess the fear starts to get into you where do I climb this mountain again? Can I climb this mountain again? What am I going to tell my team? What am I going to tell my clients? Right? Lots of things to consider. It just feels like the world is imploding. But again, it's important, I guess, again, as an entrepreneur, that we find our fortitude, build that. And that's what I did. Even though that entrepreneurial inferno had been reduced to smouldering coals, it was time to reignite it. I did have an awesome team around me, and I had an amazing customer base. I had some fantastic history. I just had to get my mind right, understand where I had failed, and fix it and get on with it. And that's what I did. I had to rule with an iron fist. That doesn't mean it was some command and control environment, not at all. It was just that I had to be the leader. And I had to show my team the way and keep them focused. And also get a coach to keep me focused, who would show me the way. Because this was a path that I hadn't walked before. So as I talk to you today, my business still runs after 20 years in Australia. It makes money, so I'm going to call that successful. I have a few other businesses in the same industry. And I guess my key message to you is to make sure that from time to time you do lower the mask, that you do rip the Band-Aid off, that you do expose your wounds. Because by doing that, you understand what your failings are, you understand how to fix them, you become coachable. And being coachable is critical if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. I now associate myself with not only JT Fox and his magnificent team of coaches who have helped me immensely, to the point where it was only 2 months ago I was speaking in South Africa. I met a young lady there who is an amazing digital marketer. I can tell you I know very little about digital marketing, but I'm in a country where there's phenomenal opportunity for that. We've since come together, we've joined forces, and we're now a business as well. So they're the type of opportunities you can do, provided you have a good coach, you have a sound vision, and you move forward with your ideas in a very controlled fashion. So the future is very bright for me, and the future can be very bright for every entrepreneur, particularly in this day and age, where there is the coaching, the guidance, the mentoring available. You don't need to do this stuff on your own, but understand that you will make mistakes. So I guess in conclusion, talk, Continue to let your entrepreneurial flame burn, because that is what fuels us. That's what makes us different than the rest. Yes, there's some massive entrepreneurial movements globally at the moment, but we're still a very, very small percentage of the global population. But understand that within that very, very small percentage, there is a massive percentage of entrepreneurs who fail. Failing is okay. Talk about it, get the guidance, and you'll do well. Thanks very much for your time.